So first thing, standing on the biblical revelation. I gave you an example. You're to love your neighbor and not eat them. Is that consistent, again, with what's under my feet? Yes? The unbeliever. Okay? Let's try it. Let's try some examples with each other. The unbeliever system, what do they say about the world? The atheist says, our view of origins, like I said last night, is the universe came from nothing, that there was inorganic, non-living matter that became living. There was non-moral matter that suddenly became moral and started demanding that other bags of protoplasm were nice to one another. We live in an unguided, unpurposed universe. We're just stuff spinning around in time and in space. Our ancestors were fish. We went from fish to philosophers. From the goo to you. That's where we came from. Okay? If you're the naturalistic materialist, you mean there is no supernatural intervention. No guidance, no governance, no personality, and all we are is matter. That's all that exists is stuff. Now, the unbeliever says the physical constants that we see around us in the world today came about by sheer accident. Get that for a moment now. The physical constants that we see around us in the world today came about by sheer accident. Do you know who said that? Physicist Lawrence Krauss, alongside Richard Dawkins while at Gamage at ASU. Now, isn't it amazing that a professor of physics, physical laws, said publicly with a smile that the physical constants that we see around us came about by sheer accident. And this is a man that teaches people laws of physics. Let me just say this. If they're sheer accidents, that means they cannot be depended upon now or in the future. There is no ability to appeal to induction that the future will be like the past if all of it is sheer accidents. The unbeliever says, science, we got to observe it, we've got to see it. But let's do an internal critique. The Christian believes that the all-powerful, personal, loving God has revealed to us, Hebrews chapter 1, that He carries the universe along to its intended destination. That Jesus upholds all things by the word of His power. That means that He carries it to its intended destination. That God is sovereign. He gives to the universe a fixed order. When we see miracles as Christians, they're supposed to surprise us, not the unbeliever. Anything's possible in the unbeliever's universe. When the unbeliever mocks you as a Christian for miracles in the Bible, you need to remember that you're the one that has the basis to believe that the universe is uniform and therefore miracles are strange occurrences. They're redemptive. They point us to God. When we see a dead man rise from the dead, we're the ones that are supposed to say, what is that? Right? We're the ones that are supposed to say, how in the world? Why? Because God governs the universe. He's given to it a fixed order. It can be clocked and timed. We can do science and physics and math. Why? Because the God who governs it, and He gives it a law-like nature so that when miracles happen, we're supposed to go, what? What just happened? That sea, the Red Sea, the fish, the loaves, the little girl coming back from the dead, Lazarus coming back from the dead. We're supposed to be in awe of that. The unbeliever system. He mocks Christians for believing in miracles. But don't you realize, in the unbeliever's system, frogs becoming princes is a real thing. Think about it. Do you see that in the unbeliever's system, they have no basis to chastise the Christians for miracles because the unbeliever believes that nothing turned into something, that inorganic matter became organic, non-moral matter became moral, fish became philosophers. Do you get the point? Their entire system, anything is possible. When they see in the scriptures a dead man came back from the dead, they should see, wow, strange things happen in this universe, right? Do you see the point? Now watch this. When the unbeliever chastises you as a Christian and they say, I believe in science. I believe in science. You need to say as a Christian, Really? You believe in science? Well, all of science is based upon induction, that the future will be like the past. So past experience will be like future experience because we can look back at what happened in the past, how we observe things, and we can project that into the future. It's called induction, the uniformity in nature. And listen, do not let this turn you off because you're appealing to it right now. You might be thinking, why do I care about that? Oh, you better care. You better care, and you do care. You just don't know that you care. Some of you guys that know that you know, and why it matters. Okay? Induction is the very basis of everything you're doing right now. Everybody right now is sitting here in this room, and none of you have been thinking at any point, oh my goodness, I could totally float away to the ceiling right now. Okay? None of you have. You've all been sitting here, and you've all been depending upon the uniformity in nature the entire time. You haven't thought twice about it. When you got out of bed today, you guys rolled your covers aside, put your feet on the floor, and you stood up. Did any of you guys think this morning when you woke up, you were like, oh no. Did anybody fear that you had float away? Everybody got up today, and you did stuff, right? You did stuff. You went to the bathroom. Many of you guys went to the bathroom because you know based on past experience, if you don't, there'll be problems later, right? You know. Uniformity in nature. You went to the bathroom and you possibly got a drink of water. Why? Many of you guys are drinking stuff right now. Why are you drinking? I'm not going to hurt you. I like to kick people in the head, but not my brothers and sisters, okay? So why are you drinking? Why are you drinking? You're thirsty. So don't drink. Your body needs water. So don't drink. What will happen? Went right to it. You'll die. Very good, okay? No hard questions today. It's early, right? So, you know based on past experience, the way our nature is, the way nature is uniform, if you don't drink, you die. And so you drink because nature is uniform, and you know this universe can be clocked, and based on past experience, if you don't do that, you're going to die. And you do that at every single turn in your life. Listen closely, because this is a devastating argument that refutes atheism at the start. Atheism cannot even speak after this. They have no justification that provides the preconditions necessary for induction, the uniformity in nature. Why? Their universe is ungoverned, it is unpurposed, it is time and chance acting on matter. They have no basis to believe that now, the next 5 seconds from now, the next 2 weeks will be like the past. All they have, time and chance acting on matter. Proof? Lawrence Krauss says, the physical constants we see came about by sheer accident. If they're accidents, my friends, then there is no basis to appeal to them in the future. Guess what is now rendered useless? Science, logic, everything. How about this? Do you know what depends upon the uniformity in nature? The pharmaceutical industry. Can you imagine if we actually lived in the universe the atheists say we live in, which is time and chance acting on matter, cannot be dependent upon, no induction, ultimately justifiable in the future? Can you imagine you go to the counter to the pharmacist and you're like, here's the script, and he's like, whoa, we don't know. The pharmacist gives you the stuff and he's like, it's just going to work? It did a few times before. We don't know in this crazy universe we live in, right? Good luck, right? You know what's amazing? Every time someone sells a prescription, they're acting like a Christian. And you know what else? When they sell a prescription at a pharmacy, they're acting like a Christian. How? In the ethical responsibility they have to make sure that they're giving the right dosage, the right kind of medicine to the right person, because it is against God's law to hurt people and to kill them. Do you see? The pharmaceutical industry is a Christian kind of industry. Some of you guys are like, no, okay. It needs reform, okay, granted. Okay, but the point is, you get it? In order to be a pharmacist, you've got to first be a Christian to be consistent. How about another industry that's based upon the uniformity in nature? How about flying airplanes? Do you know what's amazing? Every single atheist pilot is amazing, right? the atheist pilot gets behind his seat and does his checks and everything, and he gets ready to launch this aircraft with all these souls behind him into the sky. And his fundamental assertion about reality is, ready? Time and chance acting on matter. A completely ungoverned, unguided universe. You know what he can't do? He can't fly a plane like that. Every time the atheist gets on that tarmac and goes to take off, do you know what he abandons? His atheism. He believes and he lives in an ordered and guided universe at that point, and he depends upon the laws of physics and logic and math at every turn. If he doesn't, it's not possible. Do you know what else he depends upon? The ethical responsibility he has for all the people behind him. He acts for a moment like they're not just merely protoplasm. He acts for a moment like there's actually meaning and value and dignity in all these people. I was watching the movie Sully about 2 weeks ago with my family. It was amazing, just this moment. This plane crash, I don't want to ruin the movie for you, but it happened in real life, so you need to catch up. So the plane lands, specifically said it wasn't a crash, it was a water landing, okay? It lands in the water, and what was really dawned on me as soon as the movie was playing through was that Sully was just broken up, and he kept asking, how many survivors? How many survivors? There were 155. He didn't want to do anything until he found out about the survivors and needed to know about the survivors. When he found out, he just broke down and started crying because he realized, okay, everyone's alive. They're alive. You know what that is? What every single one of us know. Those are image bearers of God, and it matters if they die. You see, here's the thing. Without God, you have no basis whatsoever to care about the souls on board of an airplane or the souls really anywhere. There's no basis for grief. There's no basis for sorrow. There's no basis for suffering. But only as a Christian can you have meaning in all of those things. And so when the atheist says to you, I believe in science, ask them, oh, you believe in science? Well, don't you believe that we live in an ungoverned, unguided universe? And they say, yeah. Okay, give me a justification using your worldview and not mine. Give me a justification for the uniformity in nature, that the future will be like the past, with your atheism. And watch. Here's the internal critique. The unbeliever says, oh, okay, so science, you need to have uniformity in nature, you need to have the future like the past. Okay, so here's how it works. I know the future will be like the past because it was before. You got to think about that for a moment. I know the future will be like the past because it was before. Listen, when the unbeliever says this, it doesn't take a Christian to point it out. Bertrand Russell, one of the most famous atheists in history, he wrote about this problem in a book called Problems in Philosophy. Listen closely, this is devastating. And he said this, Problems in Philosophy. He said, we need a basis for the uniformity in nature. He says this, everything we do, literally everything we do is based upon the uniformity in nature. Logic, language, science, everything's based on the uniformity in nature. And he says this, he actually asks an imaginary opponent. He says, give me a basis for the future being like the past. I need to know. Everything in our experience is based on this. I need to know we have a basis for the future being like the past. And he goes, and if you say to me, well, it always has been, he goes, that is a refutation of itself. Because nobody's asking you what the past was. We're asking you, how do we know the future will be like the past? And the moment you appeal to the past to do it, you are refuting yourself. You need something better than, well, it always has been. So I was in a debate with some atheists a couple years ago, and I brought this up. I said, give me a basis using your atheistic worldview, not mine, your atheistic worldview for the future being like the past. Give me a basis. And he says this, well, it always has been. And so I said, so you live by faith? And he goes, well, no. I said, well, do you know the future will be like the past? He goes, well, no. I said, so you live by faith? He didn't like that. Do you see? It is a faith commitment, though. The atheist has faith, but it's a blind faith in chaos. I really hope so. The Christian also has faith, but it's not a blind faith. It is faith in a person. It's in a God who's revealed himself, and he's told us with certainty, the same kind of certainty we can say you are to love your neighbor and not eat your neighbor. God says that he governs the universe and he guides it. Listen, when the unbeliever says to you, I believe in science, he has no basis for it. How about laws of logic? How am I doing on time? Am I way over? We're done? Let me wrap it up here, okay? Hey, you guys, I'm giving you your money's worth, right? So, laws of logic. The unbeliever says that there is only, the atheist, only the material, nothing spiritual, nothing immaterial. And yet they appeal to laws of logic. But again, like laws of math, laws of logic are universal, they are unchanging, they are necessary for our human experience. And the unbeliever wants them, but they cannot justify them. You know what the atheist wants at all points? They just want to gimme. Just give me that. Just give me logic so I can argue against God. Just give me science so I can live. Just give me ethics for my children. Just give me it. I just want to have that so I can argue against God. What we need to do as Christians is point to people and say, you can't even have that without Jesus Christ. You can't have science without Jesus Christ. You can't have logic. You can't have ethics. And here's a good point. Laws of logic. You've been depending upon Him the whole time. You're doing it right now. As I'm speaking, you're going, are there any holes in what he's saying? Are there any inconsistencies? And if I had them, you'd point them out, and rightfully so. Because as Christians, when we stand on God's revelation, we know our thoughts are to be a reflection of the way God thinks. That God cannot lie. To lie is to engage in contradiction. To lie is to contradict what is actually true. The basis, this can be expanded upon, the basis of laws of logic is the very character and mind of God. Unchanging, universal, immaterial. And as Christians, we have a basis for laws of logic. But the unbeliever, ready, who believes that he's matter in motion or she's matter in motion, they have no justification for immaterial, universal laws of thought. So when the atheist says to you, Christianity is so illogical, you know what your first answer should be? Well, I reject that, but so what? You're an atheist, right? They say, well, yeah. Well, then laws of logic aren't necessary. They aren't universal. They aren't unchanging. Why are you chastising me? My grandpappy was a fish. Is it wrong to be inconsistent and illogical? And the unbeliever goes, well, no, it's not absolute. Okay, well, to the good come. It's got a purple. Wood. And the sky is hello. Mother said, what? What? And ice cream under the bridge and cars. And zoom. And the unbeliever goes, wait, you're not making any sense. Oh, but I am making sense. And a great example is I had this atheist come into chapel one day at the hospital. And I used to put signs up all over the hospital every day, and I'd say, come and refute the Christian pastor. And I would invite people to just come in and argue with me. It was grand because these people were like on detoxification medicine, high as a kite, and they would just come in to like argue with the pastor. And it was just great. Rooms were full every single night. So this atheist comes in, and he's challenging me, and I invited it, and I just wanted to love these people, and so many people came to Christ through it. It's amazing. That's how Apologia Church was formed, by the way, out of that hospital. So praise God for that. But this atheist, militant atheist comes in, he's challenging me, and so I brought up laws of logic. I said, well, laws of logic. I said, you're a materialist, you're an atheist, there's no God, there's no meaning, no order, nothing immaterial. He goes, right. I said, okay. Are laws of logic absolutely necessary? And he knew what I was doing. And he was like, no. I said, okay, they are. He goes, no. I go, okay, great, thank you, they are. He goes, no. I said, good, okay, yes. And he goes, no. I said, so yes. And he goes, no. And now everybody's face is red. They're like just trying to hold it in. He's getting furious now. He's like, no. And I said, okay, so yes. He goes, why are you doing this? I said, why am I not doing this? And he kept going, and I was contradicting him. And I said, is it bothering you that I'm contradicting you? He says, yes. I said, no. I said, you see the point? I said, you said that laws of logic are not necessary, not universal, not absolute, because you're trying to be a consistent atheist. But the moment I start contradicting you and engaging in logical contradiction, you won't have it. Why? Because you're made in the image of God. You know the God that I'm talking about. Your problem is sin. And though you try to construct a very sophisticated worldview, you can't get around the image of God that you are. And the unbeliever, all they have is brain gas. The thoughts that are happening in their mind is the result of chemical processes simply firing away in their head. In that case, they're not even really thinking, they're fizzing. And you happen to be fizzing like a Christian, and they're fizzing like an atheist. So what? That's all they have. I talked to this atheist in our debate. He's a materialist. I said, are laws of logic material or immaterial in nature? Are they made of matter? And he goes, immaterial. I said, okay, can you put one in my hand, please? He goes, Jeff, I hate when you do this. He said, no, it's happening in my brain. I said, okay, so can I cut out the law of logic? And he goes, no, it's the result of chemical processes. And if it's the result of chemical processes, listen, it's not a law, it's not universal, and I'm not required to obey it. Because what's happening in your brain is different than what's happening in my brain. And if all you have is brain gas, you don't have laws, you just simply have chemical processes. That's all the unbeliever has. That's an internal critique of their system. And it's not a matter of just a sophisticated argument. You could say it as simply as this: so what? You're an atheist. You live in a universe that doesn't care. There's no justice ahead of any of us. That's all you've got. And the reason you construct this system and yet behave like a Christian is because you know the God that I'm talking about. And you need Jesus Christ. He's your only hope. You need to turn from your sin. This is who Jesus is. He's God who came to rescue rebels. He took on flesh, died for sinners, and rose from the dead. Your only hope is turning to Him in faith. And the last thing, and this is quick because it's easy and it impacts us profoundly: ethics. You get new opportunities to underscore this point every day, because every day there is sin in the world, and every day there's brokenness in the world. Pick a subject. Pick an item that happens on the news today, and you point to the unbeliever and you say, can I ask you a question about that? Is that wrong? Was it absolutely wrong? Let me do an internal critique with your atheism. Was that wrong? I used to bring this up when it happened because it was a good example. A couple years ago in Florida, there was a man, many of you guys remember this, there was a man who, nobody really knows why it happened, but he essentially got undressed, was nude, walked across a bridge, and he came upon a homeless man who I think was sleeping, and while naked, he attacked this homeless man and began to eat his face. You guys heard that story? And it was all captured on a security camera. And you could see, listen, when the police pulled up and the police hopped out, there was a little barrier wall right here. You couldn't really see what was happening over the wall. So you see the police officer pull up to see, okay, what's going on? And he looks over this wall, and you saw the police officer fall back on his heels like he was so shocked at what he was seeing with this man hovering over this homeless man. And it's just an amazing example to use when discussing with an unbeliever their perspective. Say, ask you a question. There's an example. From your atheistic perspective, was that absolutely wrong? Now, if the unbeliever is being consistent with their own perspective, they will say, no. All the atheist has is sentimentality and preference. They have no absolutes. None. No ability to justify any absolute moral claim. If you press the unbeliever on their position, they have to say what Richard Dawkins says in River Out of Eden: no good, no evil, blind, pitiless, indifference. Dr. Will Provine, professor of biology at Cornell, said there is no immanent morality. You know what that means? It's an illusion. There's no morality. He says you live, you die, and you're gone. You're absolutely gone when you die. That is what the unbelievers have. But the point of contact, listen, the point of contact is actually touching at the image of God in them and showing them that they cannot live that way. They will not live that way. Because while the unbeliever says there's no absolute, immanent, morality for any of us, guess what he does? He goes home and he kisses his wife. He goes home and he hugs his children. He goes home and he demands justice. When somebody steals his car stereo, do you know what he does? He calls the cops. And he acts as though there's some sort of moral infraction. He acts as though there's a need, a demand for justice. What we need to point unbelievers to is you don't have justice without Jesus. You don't have righteousness without Jesus. You don't have laws of any sort without Jesus. There's no wisdom without Jesus. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. The call is repentance and faith.